2014 was the 100th anniversary of the Great War of 1914-18, which resulted in the death of millions. Congleton, then a small market town, felt the impact, both in the fighting in the trenches and on the home front. The Congleton World War I Awareness and Engagement Group was created to research and interpret that impact. Drama, poetry, writing, planting trees, painting and ceramics all created a year-long programme of activities. A grant from the Heritage Lottery Fund supported the programme. The cenotaph in the town centre has deteriorated.
Yes, one of the problems we've got at this site at the moment is the actual wall, the retaining wall for the road behind me, is held up on buttresses. As you can see, we've got no wall altogether, and the road is crumbling into the cenotaph site. Also, the wall's at an angle. It's falling over. So before anything can be done with the site, the situation with the wall has got to be addressed.
And efforts are being made to improve this important symbol of remembrance. A group of volunteers, drawn from a large range of organisations in Congleton, began to plan a series of commemorative events. Pictures of the time, courtesy of the Chronicle, gave a taste of the period of conflict and the effect of the war on the town. The Chronicle's editor, Jeremy Conliffe, ran a series of articles from 1914 editions of his paper and kindly provided archival photographs.
Obviously, the Chronicle archives is such a wealth of information, and it was ideal, obviously, when we come to commemorating and looking back at World War I and its impact on Congleton. Once the war got underway and our guys went out to do their bit, and then we started publishing letters they sent back to their families from the front, and they're written in such a graphic yet matter-of-fact way. It had more impact really about what they witnessed, and boy, did they witness some grim things, and they said it in a very matter-of-fact way, but it brought home to us doing all this research about what they went through.
John Pullen researched and produced a book giving information about every name engraved on the cenotaph.
I decided some years ago, having looking at the cenotaph, and they were just names. There's no addresses, there's no regiments, and people tend to forget who they are. So some years ago I picked my uncle's name off it, went over to the Somme and followed in his footsteps. Done all the research on it. When I came back and looked at all the other names, I decided to do it for the 242, one by one, and since then I have wrote a book on it. It's taken me 7 years to complete.
And Sheila Dutton is still researching the names of at least 200 soldiers whose names were never recorded there.
2 years ago, last Christmas, my daughter and son-in-law were up for Christmas, and Mike, who is an ex-para, suddenly asked, was there a war memorial in Congleton? Well, yes. He said, well, where is it? The next thing, he's on his way out through the door, and he came back 2 hours later, frozen cold, with a full list of all the names that are on the war memorial. Asked what he was going to do, he says, I'm going to write a book. I said, well, in that case, so am I. So between us, we've been finding all the names that are not on and concentrating on that. And there are over 300 just for World War I that aren't on there and are entitled to be. A lot of the ones that were missed off, it was down to mums saying, my son's coming back. He never, ever gave up hope. They didn't want to see the name listed as being dead. Mother love. That's all it was, mother love. Yeah, which is wonderful.
Well, in 1921, before the cenotaph was here, the Congleton Town Council formed a committee to decide which names were going on the cenotaph. It was done by people writing in, giving the names. It was limited to 240 people. Anyone over 240 was left off the list, and then they were vetted. There are people on the cenotaph that weren't even born in Congleton, and the people that were born in Congleton are missing off it, and it wants putting right.
As the War Memorial stands at the moment, it really isn't big enough to take all the names that are entitled to go on there. The situation here is not ideal, and it has been mentioned that it should be moved down into Congleton Park, which would be ideal. There's lots of space, lots of room, everyone can get parking and all the parades can take place quite easily, no worry, no danger to anyone. It'd be absolutely brilliant and in a beautiful spot as well.
Lyndon Murgatroyd, a well-known local historian, produced a very informative book about World War I and Congleton, entitled Lest We Forget.
Well, this book, which I produced last March, it was launched at Congleton Museum. It's called Lest We Forget, and it's about Congleton during the First World War, and it actually was composed by looking at the Congleton Chronicle through 1914 to 1918 and picking out relevant articles that reflected what was actually going on during the years of the First World War. But also, in addition to that, I researched some of the soldiers, the local soldiers that were fighting in both wars, and there's quite a lot of stories about the individual soldiers as well. So it's a nice record of what it must have been like to live in Congleton during that time. And included also in the book are all the shops and businesses that were around at that time. So you could actually walk around the town with this book as if it was 1914.
Free copies were given to every school library in Congleton to stimulate research. The A&E programme was launched on June the 8th, 2014 at Brass on the Grass in Congleton Park. Petra Lee, a talented local artist, created two iconic paintings of a soldier and a nurse. John Linley, a former Cheshire Poet Laureate, was commissioned to write a poem. Paid in full, was inspired by the names on the cenotaph plaques of those who gave their lives.
MacDonald, Rutledge, Estley, Jones, Morris, Lomas, Truman, Cope, Hodgkinson and Ball. Barnett, Parker, Hill, Dean, Rutland, Norris, Robinson, Mountford, Sproston, Blake and Hall. For the widows and orphans to come, the Chronicles Shilling Fund, please donate. And from distant France, an insistent drum thrums in the hearts of men at glory's gate. Join the colours, fly the flag, share in the fighting. The cause is vague, but for now, the choice is free. And the sound of a rifle's more exciting than that of a machine in a factory. Taylor, Joseph, Turner, Frank, Carney, James, here sir, each schoolboy with arm erect. Now, different uniforms, but the same names barked out. The reply, yes sir, present and correct. But a country's flag protects no one from harm, a bitter truth that many learn too late. Death is no respecter of uniform, it is random, cold, indiscriminate. Now Walter Ashley, Samuel Jesse Wright, all those who joined the great majority march from light to dark, from dark to light, carved in stone and on our faint memory. A bell in St. Stephen's rings, shadows fall on Lawton Street, answers are sought. What price glory? A shilling for the widows, the orphans, a penny for your thoughts.
The Theatre in the Quarter, a Cheshire-based company, gave two performances at Congleton Station of a moving production, Over by Christmas, which relived the departure of young volunteers to join the army after Kitchener's appeal for more troops for the front.
Your country needs you.
Later in the year, at the New Life Church, a poignant production of Silent Night by the same company told the story of the Christmas Eve truce of 1914. Dave McCadden, a well-known local playwright, wrote a unique play A Soldier's Goodbye, which I had the privilege of directing.
So I decided to write a play involving poetry and music, and that was performed at Soldier's Goodbye last October at Daneside Theatre with a very kind help of this lady here, Annabelle, who actually directed it.
The play, Dave hasn't mentioned, the play was centred in Congleton. And he'd researched all the local history, and he mentioned all the old shops, and it was a lovely play. And then the Biddulph Male Voice Choir did two sessions, and we had World War I poetry. But I was absolutely delighted when he asked me to direct the play, because it was wonderful, very moving, and very pertinent to Congleton. And it was a great success. Poetry workshops, led by John Linley, were held in the town's primary and secondary schools. Some very insightful poems were created by the youngsters. Music played an important role. The Congleton Choral Society mounted a moving concert, Lest We Forget, which included pieces such as For the Fallen by Douglas Guest, Maurice de Ruffel's Requiem, and the Nelson Mass by Joseph Haydn. Joseph Hearson, an 18-year-old pupil, was commissioned to compose and conduct his own composition. Memoriam Eorum Retinibimus was played by the Congleton Youth Orchestra. An anthology of war poems, What Price Glory, was published. 42 young people contributed to this impressive anthology, sharing their reflections on the Great War.
If you remember, a long time ago, we came up with the idea of commemorating World War I in Congleton in different ways. And I came to you because you are a local expert on poetry, having been a former Cheshire Poet Laureate. And I must say, I want to congratulate you on a superb anthology that you have produced with the help of so many young poets in our town. Tell me, John, what do you think of the whole project?
Well, it's been tremendous to be involved in it. It's been a very exciting work. The children have really had only one occasion, one chance to come up with these poems, many of them writing the first poem in their lives, no real time to redraft, and their efforts were really commendable. And I think it's a book I hope they'll all be proud to be in. I'm certainly proud of it.
I think so. And I think their parents, and I think the grandparents also, are very proud indeed, John.
Agony rooms the trenches. The sickening noise here will scar me for life. The sights I have seen here will stay with me forever. Agony finds its way into every soldier. Each and every one of us are clinging on to life. The things I have been to give me flashbacks. If only you could have seen what I have.
Horror, blood and death. Horror, silhouettes falling. Horror, agony. Devastation, bang. Devastation, danger, gore. Devastation, war. Disaster, trench foot. Disaster in the rubble. Disaster, trenches.
Germany is here. They are coming to get us. Germany is here. Your country needs you. We need your help in the war. You need to help us. Put your guns down now. The Great War has finished. Time to go home now.
A seminar was held to stimulate discussion about a proposed piece of sculpture or artefact which could ultimately be installed at the cenotaph site after its renovation.
Piece of an artefact, sculpture, maybe even something, just words, which reflects how we feel about World War I 100 years down the line.
Linda Hulse, a local historian, devised free bookmarks for the pupils of the town.
We've commemorated the men on our war memorial by producing bookmarks. Each bookmark has the photograph and the story of a soldier who died in the Great War. They range from boys who were actually 17 when they joined up, fought all the way through the war and died in their early 20s. We also have a man who, when he died, left 7 orphan children. So it really shows you the impact of the Great War on Congleton.
Congleton Museum was commissioned to produce packs of educational material.
Minutes of meetings and things like that. There was some fascinating stuff in this.
First hand.
Oh, goodness gracious, yes.
I think the important thing was to try and find items which weren't readily accessible. It was becoming very obvious that by the time we were 6 to 8 months into the commemorations of World War I, that a lot of material had been used. And this was a way of engaging young people with a totally different set of information from different sources. For example, there's a reproduction of one person's diary of their time in Gallipoli and moving across from Australia to Gallipoli on the boats. So that gave a different perspective with some of his own personal photographs attached. So each of these things had a different dimension to our understanding of World War I. For example, the War Peace souvenir, of which there are very few around now, lists every serviceman and their address in Congleton who served during the war. It's an exceptional resource which students can use at various levels.
But it's a rather splendid
it's beautifully put together.
Resource. Whoever thought about this idea of putting something into the school?
I think a lot of this about local history is that we want a rich set of resources, and getting personal experiences and other sorts of things.
That's it.
Often our staff here haven't got the time to get to that layer of detail.
Well, there's some splendid stuff in here, really. These are the photographs of that I've just pulled out. I've taken it out of sequence actually now. There's a pack in here which says something about the Quinta.
Some Red Cross Hospital was actually based in what is now a residential home.
Absolutely. You can tell how old it is. The vicar's sitting there with a pair of, he's got sort of +4s or whatever it is on. It's really good, isn't it? And look at all the lads in wheelchairs, the sort of wheelchairs they had then, basket chairs.
It's a sad occasion today somewhat really. Margaret and I worked together something like 25 years. Margaret should have been here today, but sadly that can't be the case. We're all aware of how much work she put into the awareness and engagement group, and the amount of effort that others that worked with her put into it as well, and we're extremely grateful for that. I'd like to reassure everybody that the Cenotaph project is not dead. None of us are quitters. We're moving on, regardless. That's not just for Margaret's sake, but it's for her own satisfaction. It will not be dropped. On behalf of the group and the Cenotaph Construction Group, I'd like to present the school with this awareness pack and information pack for future reference should you do any work on the World War I. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. On behalf of the school, I'd love to thank you for the efforts that you've gone to create this pack for us. As we've looked through the pack, it's got photographs, it's got details. We can see the names of family members from Congleton who served in the war and how they signed up. And we would love our young people to be able to do their own personal research into their family histories by having access to this wonderful material. So thank you very, very much for your efforts.
A beautiful commemorative glass vase to mark the 100th anniversary of the Great War was commissioned by the A&E Group from local artist Diane Harding and was presented to the Congleton Town Council.
It's made all of glass, quite heavy, and it's layers of glass cut with the design in, so it's all lots of layers that are then put into the kiln and fused. 100 commemorative rowan trees, sponsored by local trusts, firms and individuals, were planted chiefly by teenagers in school grounds, churchyards and along the roads leading into the town.
The tree was one of many that were given to organisations in Congleton last year to commemorate the war, and this is one that was been presented to us, and it just seemed an apt place to put the stone with the poppy on that Bella came back from Belgium with. So it's to commemorate those who gave their lives in the war.
St Mary's Ex-Servicemen's Association is a group of ex-service personnel who meet regularly to exchange their experiences.
I'm the chairman of Congleton Ex-Service Association, and I really think that people should remember the Great War because a lot of people gave their lives so that we could live the life we live now.
The moving force behind the World War I Awareness and Engagement Group was Margaret Williamson. She worked tirelessly and with so much enthusiasm that without her, much of what happened in this town, or what you've heard on the DVD, would not have happened. Sadly, Margaret died just before she was due to record the final words of this record of the A&E Group's achievements. And I'm going to close by reading the few words that she wanted to say. I should like to thank all those people of Congleton who contributed in varying innovative ways to the marking of the town's commemoration of the 100th anniversary of World War I. Never let us forget those Congletonians who lost their lives in the tragic conflict.
Out of your troubles in your